Hello, dear viewers. Support me by subscribing to my channel and share my video if you like it. And also, make sure you comment your thoughts. Now let's start the video. The infant's cries echoed as the blustery wind got stronger and shook him roughly. Small hands scratched at a marred forehead as his eyes opened and looked desperately for familiarity. But there was nothing. For a fraction of a moment, the baby's hand brushed against a rectangular envelope, but the letter was quickly blown away from his touch as another gusty wind passed by and blew it far from view. The door opened and a large man looked down, disgruntled. His eyes widened in horror and immediate recognition. "This couldn't be! Petunia," he called, demanding his wife at his side. After bickering and cursing, it was decided that once morning came, the babe should be delivered to an orphanage or a hospital. They took the boy in and cruelly stuck him in the corner like a broken toy. His cries died when Vernon silenced him violently by picking him up and shaking him until his small body couldn't take the stress anymore. The sun rose and hit the child's eyelids softly, but he didn't wake. Petunia came down, dressed and ready to get rid of such a nuisance. She sighed in irritation, picked up the basket, and walked to the car. With a bit of pity and the small amount of love she still held for her sister, she decided to take the child to a hospital. She walked in, embarrassed, and wondered what people would think of her once she made her intentions clear. She cleared her throat and went up to the first nurse she saw. "This child was left on my doorstep." The nurse's face fell into confusion. And I don't know whose child it is. I have no obligation to take care of him. The only thing I was told was that his name and that his parents died. She quickly lied, looking down as if she were sad. She had no idea why he was on her doorstep, actually. She just hoped in vain that the nurse would just believe her so she could leave. The nurse nodded sadly, thinking that maybe Petunia wanted to find the child's parents. "His name? Harry Potter. Dr. Cullen!" A loud voice shouted in dismay. He looked up just as his office door was opened. "Doctor, I don't know what to do. She just came in, gave me the basket, and left. Now, I know this has happened before, but it's just never happened to me, and—" "What is it?" he asked, trying to calm her. She gently gave him the basket, and he held his breath as he looked down at the small baby boy. "And this is an abandoned child, Doctor. He was left on someone's doorstep, and she wasn't sure what to do, so she brought him here. All she knew was that the boy's parents died." "Does he have—" "Harry Potter." Carlisle sighed. "My shift is over, but I'll give him a proper medical exam. Call Child Services so they can contact an adoption agency." "Yes, Doctor. Thank you, sir." Carlisle nodded softly. He turned back to the baby. "Hello there, Harry," he cooed. Harry opened his eyes, and the vampire was shocked to see the emerald eyes that Edward once had. He smiled affectionately. "What a beautiful child." Harry giggled. "Mitty," he exclaimed. Carlisle hummed as he walked Harry down for his checkup. "Mitty word! Mitty word!" He laughed. "Mungo, Mungo?" Carlisle laughed at his child gibberish. He set Harry down on an examining table and began to look over the boy to make sure he was okay. "Mama?" he suddenly asked, as if realizing his parents weren't anywhere near. "Mama?" Carlisle gave a soft smile as he closed his eyes and listened to Harry's heartbeat. "I'm sorry, my child, but they're gone." Harry tilted his head, obviously not understanding. "Don't worry, we'll find you a family that will love you just like your ma and dad." Harry looked away, and Carlisle could tell the babe wasn't satisfied with his answer. Of course, as young as Harry was, he wouldn't understand. He let out a deep breath before continuing. "Well, young man," he said, "you seem to be quite a healthy baby." Harry giggled and stood on top of the table. "Does say, Howie man." "Gra." The raven-haired child raised his hands, shaping them into claws, and began pawing at the air. Carlisle laughed as he took the child into his arms, once more. "Come now, let's—" A shrill ring sounded, and Carlisle looked at the phone on the wall. He grinned at Harry before someone called him and asked him to pick up. He quickly made his way back to his office, and the secretary transferred the call. "Hello?" he asked, setting Harry down onto his lap. "Carlisle," a hesitant voice asked. "What's wrong?" Alice has had a vision of Harry. Carlisle was shocked into silence. The family knew. He looked down. "She sees us adopting him." "What?" he shouted harsher than intended. Harry flinched and began crying. "Oh, no, no, dear child." "I'm sorry, don't cry." Carlisle set the phone on speaker and got up to bounce Harry in his arms. He began to hum a quiet tune, something he heard Edward play once before. His humming slowed as he realized what he was doing. A few minutes with the baby, and he was already becoming attached. How is it possible, Esme? We could put the child into serious harm. Well, she started. By the sound of her voice, Carlisle knew his wife wanted desperately to adopt Harry. Alice said we wouldn't, was all she said, as they fell into another awkward silence. Jasper would have to hunt more, he said warily. In fact, all of us will, if Alice's vision is correct. Oh, Carlisle, I know how hard it will be and how quick this decision is, but think of it, a child, a baby to raise. He pinched the bridge of his nose and gave Harry a soft smile when the young boy placed his head on his shoulder. I'll call child services. Rosalie fidgeted in her seat. Were they actually going to do this? Was adopting a human into the family a smart decision? She scoffed. Of course it wasn't. The baby would seriously be hurt if one slipped. Then what would adopting him be worth? She glanced at Emmett, who looked far too excited. She scoffed and covered her face with her hands. Would it be so bad? It was what she always wanted, having a child to raise and call her own. Surely that motive alone could keep her in control. Alice was bouncing around in one of the rooms. She had gone in hours ago, telling everyone she had to decorate. Edward revealed that in Alice's vision, Carlisle's looks were persuasive enough to allow Harry to stay the night. Besides, as Alice stated, Harry was going to be adopted. Edward, of course, was furious. He flew around the house, cursing everything in his way and shouting about the level of stupidity in the family. Jasper was letting out shaky breaths, as if he needed them. The tense atmosphere was affecting him deeply. In one moment, he felt nervousness and anxiety flooding through him, but it quickly changes to excitement and overwhelming joy. In an hour, Carlisle would be walking through the front door with Harry in his arms. Esme was in the kitchen, furiously cooking up a storm. The dining room table was already covered with sweets, such as cookies and muffins. She finished desserts and went straight back to work on food that she thought Harry could eat for dinner. The minutes passed quickly, but it felt like forever to the surrogate mother. She wrung her hands together and looked at her children for support. Alice sat at her left, holding her hand with a giddy smile. Emmett came to the other, throwing an arm around her. Her unneeded breath caught in her throat as they heard Carlisle's car approach. A door opened and closed, then another. Carlisle said something in hushed tones to Harry, and the baby giggled in response. Carl room, they heard. Rosalie couldn't stop the laugh that left her. Emmett gripped Esme's shoulder tightly with a grin. He stood with her as they made their way to the door. This is my house, Harry. You'll be staying for the night, and hopefully, if they say yes, you can stay and be a part of my family. They heard Carlisle explain as a key entered the lock. Esme pulled Emmett's arm off her shoulder and gripped his hand tightly. Edward and Jasper were looking at each other anxiously, and Alice bounced on her heels. Rosalie toyed with the hem of her shirt in anticipation. The door opened, and Carlisle set the child down. Harry took steps forward into the house. Esme watched in anticipation as Harry looked around their large house in awe. He lifted his foot to continue inward, but tripped over the rug. Esme shrieked, quickly letting go of Emmett and Alice, and making her way to the baby. Rosalie at her side. Carlisle shook his head and picked Harry up, while Esme quickly began to swipe her hand over Harry's body. Are you okay, little one? She asked in concern. Harry's giggle bounced off the walls, sounding like music to the worried woman. He pointed at Alice and proclaimed, Fairy. Alice pouted as everyone laughed. The baby quickly wriggled his way out of Carlisle's arms and clumsily made his way to Emmett. Hi, Emmett roared. Carlisle laughed as Harry took the same pose he did in the hospital. Hi, man, too. Grr. Emmett's booming laughter sounded. He bent down until his face was inches away from Harry. He let out a loud growl, a real one, to amuse Harry. Rosalie smacked the back of his head angrily while Edward groaned in the corner. What are you, stupid? You'll scare. She slowly trailed off as she looked back at Harry. The boy was on his back, laughing hysterically. Mooey. The tall vampire frowned. Is he calling me a cow? Carlisle cleared his throat and cut in. I believe his family may have had dogs. We saw a rather large black dog on the street, and Harry pointed to it and called it Pulfulf. It could be that they had another that's name resembles what Harry is saying. Harry shook his head. No? Whoopsie moon. He go-a-wo-wo. The entire family froze and stared at Harry. Carlisle sat on the ground next to him. Can you say that again, Harry? Mui go-a-wo. Pie-foof go arfarf. Harry said proudly. Hi right, hi we win cookie. If the situation weren't so serious, he would have laughed. Not right now, child, he turned, but not before seeing Harry's lip tremble. Edward, what do you see? Carlisle, Edward shouted as the family gasped. Esme's hand flew up and pointed at Harry. Carlisle quickly turned back and looked at him. Harry was sitting there, swaying his head back and forth as he munched happily on a chocolate chip cookie. Emmett grabbed Rosalie protectively. What the... Emmett, language! Alice scolded before Esme could. What is he? Jasper asked, his face contorted in worry. Edward quickly interrupted. Carlisle, his mind is filled with so many things. Werewolves, people turning into animals, floating objects. He's just settled on one of his parents, and they're both holding twigs. Why are they holding twigs? He gulped and nodded his head. Oh, wands. Wands? Ismay asked in confusion. Well, they're waving it around, and jets of light have appeared out of them, and... He quieted. So did Harry. Edward's eyebrows shot up. Last night was Halloween. Yes? They nodded. Someone went into their house, and... He trailed off, and a look of horror crossed his face. Carlisle, his mother was murdered in front of him. His father? Carlisle asked hurriedly. Killed before them, he rushed them upstairs before the vile murderer came in. How was his mother killed? Edward looked up and glanced at every face in the room. He raised the wah stick, and a jet of green light came out and ran through her. She just fell to the ground. Oh God, Carlisle, she kept screaming and pleading to spare Harry. Smeek gripped Carlisle's arm. We can't let him go. What if that man is still out there looking for him? Rosalie picked Harry up and bounced him up and down. The emerald eyes stared up with a smile. Emmett came behind her and wrapped his arms around her waist, resting his chin on her shoulder. He smiled down at Harry comfortingly. Harry raised a hand and rested it on Rosalie's cheek before laying his head on her unoccupied shoulder. The vampires were quite soothing to be around. After all, Alice's eyes glazed over for a few moments before she let out a smile. Don't worry, the pretty little social worker will be easily swayed. Why is that? Esme asked, not sure if she should be happy that they could adopt Harry so quickly, or scared that a woman could be so easily convinced. Could it happen with others? Would she so willingly give the children away? Edward shook his head with a laugh. She will become mesmerized by Carlisle's beauty. Why is everything centering on Carlisle today? Emmett pouted. I'm handsome too. Of course you are, Rosalie said, stating it as if it were fact. She set Harry down, and the boy ran into Esme's arms. The woman smiled at him. Is Carlisle gonna look extra handsome so we can keep you? Harry tilted his head. Handsome? He pursed his lips and raised his chin while flicking his hair back with the back of his hand. Howie handsome? They all laughed happily. Well, Doctor, Miss Corell said, her eyelashes fluttering every so often. Carlisle tried not to squirm uncomfortably. It's been a week, and it seems that little Harry is exceptionally happy with your family. I'm happy to say you seem to be the perfect family for him. Wonderful. My family and I shall celebrate now. Mail me the paperwork, thank you, he told her quickly before shuffling her out. Oh, but... He slammed the door and leaned on it as if she would break through. Good God, the woman doesn't have any understanding of the existence of my wife. Alice giggled and hugged the man. Well done, Daddy. Now let's go find Harry and tell him. He rolled her eyes at her childishness. Harry was in the living room, bouncing up and down on Jasper's lap. The vampire was looking away, his lips sealed into a think line and his chest unmoving. He was obviously holding his breath. Carlisle picked him up and smiled. Harry, Miss Corell has agreed to let us keep you in our family. You're now Harry Cullen, the son of Carlisle and Esme. Harvey frowned. Harvey Potter, Wayma and Da. Esme sighed and ran her hand on his back. You see, sweetie, your mom are in heaven now, so we're going to take care of you for them, and we'll love you just like they would want us to. Heaven with Gamma and Gappa? They nodded. Harry's mouth shaped into an O before he nodded. "'Kay, you be Maud and Dan now." Carlisle sighed in relief. Thankfully, Harry was still too young to understand what happened clearly. At least he was accepting. Harry was finally 2. The family agreed on celebrating Harry's birthday on the 1st of November, the day that Harry came into their lives. In a few days, they'd be moving again back to America. Jasper was slowly gaining more control and was able to carry Harry around the house. Edward was trying desperately to teach Harry piano, saying that starting at a young age would be better for him. Alice damn near bought every toy she found when she took Harry shopping, and Rosalie and Emmett were settling comfortably into the position of Harry's elder siblings as well. Esme and Carlisle enjoyed life with Harry, loving the feeling of taking care of a child. Mama, Esme turned and looked at the mop of black hair that was flying furiously at her. She opened her arms as the 2-year-old jumped into them. She laughed and swung him around. "What is it, sweetie?" "Edward," she sighed. "Edward, stop making your brother play piano." "But, Esme," he said, quickly appearing by their side, "this is a good age for him to start learning." "He's 2, she said flatly. "His fingers are barely big enough to stretch a centimeter apart." "Well, now that's just an exaggeration." She shook her head. "When he's 4? "Oh, but Esme, when he's 4, you can start teaching him." "Fine," he muttered, striding away. "Thanks, Mama," Harry smiled. "Cookie?" "I'm sorry, Harry, but you can't have cookies until you've finished lunch." He pouted, but allowed Esme to sit him in his high chair and set a plate down, filled with food for him. He reluctantly picked up a spoon and began picking at his food. "Start eating, young man, or you aren't getting any cookies today." He grumbled and shoveled a spoonful of corn into his mouth, glaring at his mother all the while. She smiled at him and tickled his chin. He giggled and turned away. "That's my baby boy." She walked over to the counter, poured milk into a sippy cup for him, and set it on his table. "Juice," he demanded. "Harry, no. You're having milk." "Mama, juice." "No." "Gah!" Carlisle swiftly appeared in the room and smiled at the boy. "Juice." "What did your mother say?" he asked calmly, already knowing the answer. "No." "Well, then you're gonna have milk." "Juice." They turned and watched the top of the sippy cup blow off and rocket into the wall while the milk shot out and splashed onto the floor. The 2 stood in silence as their elder children walked in to look at the scene. Milk was slowly flowing through the pattern of the tiles, and the cover of the cup was lodged into the wall. Harry blushed and hid his face, something he always seemed to do when accidental spurts of magic leaked through. Esme sighed and grabbed a towel. "Harry Cullen, if you weren't so little, I'd make you clean this mess yourself." Carlisle secured a snoring Harry into his car seat. Every one of his children asked to have Harry in their car, but it was simply not allowed. There was no way Carlisle would let Harry out of his sight. He kissed his son's raven hair and pulled back to close the door. After settling himself into the driver's seat, he gave Esme a brief smile and pulled out of the parking lot. They were on their way to the Denali coven. "Carlisle," Esme said softly. "Yes, dear." "Oh, what if they want to take Harry away?" He nearly slammed down on the brake at the preposterous idea. "What? The Denali coven?" "Yes, it's just, he's so adorable. Everyone would love to have him as their own, and—" "Don't be silly, Esme," he laughed. "Paranoia is unbecoming of you."
If she could blush, she would have.
"This is the first time he's gonna be meeting another family in 1 year.
I don't have a right to be worried."
"Of course you can be worried, but kidnapping?" She pursed her lips before laughing quietly to herself. He brought her hand up to his lips and kissed it lovingly. "Don't worry so." A loud shriek caught him off guard, and eye shocked the car swerved. The vampires behind him noticed, but any human wouldn't have realized that the car took an inch out of track for a fraction of a second. "Harry," he cried. "What's wrong?" "Where's Bear?" The 2 cringed in the front. Bear was a mutilated stuffed animal that Harry could never let go of. It was in perfect condition. Until Emmett saw it, of course. The brute growled and attacked it as if it were real. Harry nearly fainted when he saw Bear ripped in half, a button eye missing, and stuffing hanging loosely from Emmett's mouth. While Harry was asleep in the airport, Alice had taken Bear and disposed of it by throwing it into a trash can. The boy wouldn't be pleased once he heard that Bear was gone. Carlisle cleared his throat. "Son, your mother would like to tell you something." She shot her husband a glare before turning back and looking at Harry with a soft glow in her eyes. "Sweetie," Alice threw him out in the garbage. She cringed once she realized what she said. Alice would be severely angry. Tears leaked out of Harry's eyes, and he began screaming at the top of his lungs. Esme looked out the back window to see Edward flinch in his car. "Carlisle," she pleaded desperately. "Don't worry, son. We'll get you a new stuffed animal," he promised. "I want a bear," he cried piteously. Esme began looking around wildly. "Oh, please, Carlisle, let's find a toy store now." "What? Oh, Carlisle, please. Can we at least bring our things to the house first before we go out and look for a toy store?" Carlisle, look at him. He gripped the steering wheel and looked at Edward in his rearview mirror. He saw his son nod in understanding. Carlisle groaned as he took the next exit, knowing that his children weren't following it. Tanya ran out with a smile on her face. She hugged Alice tightly. "Where is Carlisle and Esme?" she asked politely, but Alice could see she didn't really care. The tall vampire's eyes were on Edward. Alice rolled her eyes playfully. "They went into town to look for a toy store," she answered. "Harry is quite unhappy that I've gotten rid of his toy." Yes," she exclaimed. "The human. I've heard many stories about him from Esme." Edward grabbed his bags and gave her a polite smile as he walked past her and into the house. Tanya sighed as her eyes followed his every step. Rosalie shook her head, not very pleased with the way she latched onto Edward, and passed her by without a glance, dragging Emmett along. Jasper grasped their bags and nodded at Alice. The pixie-like vampire waved at Kate and Irina as they came out before the couple quickly made their way to the room they'd be staying in. Eleazar and Carmen were in the living room, waiting for the vampires to settle into their rooms. Once everyone was in the living room, the Cullens decided it was the perfect time to inform the others about Harry. An hour later, Carlisle's car came to a screeching halt in front of the house. "Come on, Harry. It's time to meet everyone." "No!" A stubborn voice rang. "Young man, your father and I just bought you 3 new toys." "Don't be stubborn," Esme scolded. "Don't want to..." "And why not?" Carlisle asked. "Is Alice there?" Edward laughed as Alice flinched. "Harry, 2 of your new toys are stuffed animals. Can't you forgive Alice yet?" "But Bear..." Esme sighed as she opened the door, Harry in her arms. "Sweetie, you have Jinx the Fox and Corduroy Bear now." He scoffed and hid his face in his mother's shoulder. Everyone stood as Carlisle and Esme walked into the living room. Kate smiled when she saw the boy in her arms. "Everyone, this is Harry," she said proudly. Harry burrowed closer to his mother. Now, sweetie, don't be rude." He looked up and looked around. Esme placed him on the ground, but he whined as he tried to get back into her arms. She shook her head with a teasing smile. He pouted before running over to Rosalie. The blonde's eyebrows rose. Harry's bottom lip began to tremble, and his eyes watered. Rose looked around uncomfortably, not used to showing affection in front of others. With a groan, she let out a quiet "oh" and picked him up quickly. Harry giggled and moved around until he was at ease. "You little trickster," she accused. He leaned up and kissed her cheek before resting his head against her chest once more. "Look at the pretty women and say hi, Harry," Emmett said. He picked him off Rose's lap and set him in the middle of the rug, making the boy groan. "Hi," he said stubbornly. He looked up and saw Tanya smiling kindly at him. He stood, deciding to walk around and see what the new people looked like. On his way up, he tripped over his feet, and instinctively, Kate reached out and grabbed him. Harry let out a strangled yelp and fell backwards. "Harry!" they all cried as Edward jumped up and caught him before his head could crash against the floor. "I'm so sorry," Kate told them, horrified. She held her hand close to her chest, fearful that she might hurt him again. Harry got back up and collided into Jasper, unconsciously knowing that this brother could calm him down. Jasper stroked his hair and sent waves of peace towards the young boy. Harry's tense shoulders drooped and his eyes fell as he surrendered to sleep. Rosalie glared at her husband and smacked the back of his head. "If you just let him stay on my lap, then none of this would have happened." Emmett shrugged. "It'll be a funny story to tell him when he's older." Later on, after Harry awoke, Edward sat next to him, delighted at the 3rd toy Harry chose. It was a tiny, red, tabletop scoring hut, only having 25 keys on it. Esme and Carlisle had never seen their son so happy before. See how the black keys go 2, then 3, 2, then 3? The first white key in front of the 2 is called C. "Hey!" Harry exclaimed happily. "Well, it seems he won't be complaining about Edward anymore," Jasper stated. "I guess all he needed was a smaller piano. It is rather intimidating to someone as small as Harry." C, D, E, F. Harry nodded. CDFG. No, Harry, Edward said. He picked Harry up with a smile. He moved back a few keys and said, how about we start with A, B, C, D, E, F, and G? Recognition lit up in Harry's eyes as he proceeded to name the keys as Edward played them. Very good, and they just repeat like that down the piano. For days, all Harry would say was the alphabet from A to G repeatedly. Although Edward was smiling proudly, the others were trying desperately to block out the sound of the giddy 2-year-old. He began humming what the keys sounded like and pressing his fingers down on the table like he saw his older brother do on the piano. He even pulled Edward back to his little skowing hut to learn more. Instead of Edward pressing the keys down, Harry was doing it himself, with one finger, of course. Shockingly, he had remembered where the A key was, and when Edward told him to start at C, he nearly did it perfectly. Although she didn't want to interrupt, Esmu walked into the room. Harry, it's time for dinner, she informed him.
Nope.
Yes, it is, little prince, she told him, walking over to pick him up. Harry quickly squirmed his way up into Edward's lap. Nope.
I'll get your father, she warned. Harry shrugged and continued to press the keys down with Edward. The vampire looked back at her with a smug grin. She glared at him before turning around. Carlisle. The two heard her shout in a sing-song voice. Carlisle appeared and walked over to his sons.
What have you done now, Harry? Piano, Edward corrected. Carlisle bent down. Harry, look at me while I'm talking to you. Emerald eyes stared up into his taupe's ones. Do you know that it's time for you to eat dinner? Yes. And? His bottom lip began to tremble and his eyes began to water. Edward looked down and hid his face, knowing that Harry was intentionally doing this. Carlisle would be putty in his hands. Carlisle, Esme started knowingly. Daddy, he begged, I want to learn with Edward. Carlisle's eyes flickered between his wife and his sons. 10 more minutes. He quickly got up and pulled on Esme's arm. Carlisle? A few minutes couldn't hurt. Do you want to raise a healthy human boy or not? Dear God, woman, did you see the look he gave me? Harry giggled before turning back around and pressing a key down. Duh. Edward smirked. What a devious little child. Hopefully Emmett would never find out. Remus Lupin wasn't angry. No, not angry at all. Remus Lupin was absolutely livid. What do you mean? I can't visit Harry? Dumbledore's eyes twinkled. It was nice to see someone so protective of the young lad. Simple, Remus, you can't visit him at the Dursleys. And why? Not simple, Remus, he said again. Harry isn't at the Dursleys. Seeing that the werewolf was about to destroy his office, Dumbledore quickly explained. A year ago, when we first brought Harry to the Dursleys, it appeared that they disregarded my directions and brought him to a hospital, unwilling to take care of him. I didn't know about any of this until I checked in a month later with a Miss Fig, the squib who lives next door to them. Why didn't you check in earlier then? A month? Her flu wasn't working properly. We had an agreement that if there was a problem, she would flu. But I wanted to leave the family alone to settle for a month, and so... Well, where is he now? The last I checked, he was with a loving, caring family named the Cullens. Remus scratched his head in frustration. Why would you let him stay with them? Are they muggles? Do they even know anything about magic? What do you think they'll do to him when he does accidental magic? He's been doing it since he was 7 months old. Remus, I believe that having Harry with the Cullens will be much more beneficial than having him with the Dursleys. Why do you say that? First off, Harry will be with a family who loves him. That night, Professor McGonagall was quite unhappy with me. She didn't like the Dursleys one bit. Apparently I was wrong about them. I thought after seeing Harry, they would grow to care for him. But that wasn't the case. I looked around and found out at a local hospital that Petunia had given Harry to them. I checked on the Cullens right after I found out. He stopped himself and laughed, which was quite hard. I'll tell you, but Harry was definitely happy and being cared for. He has many elder siblings, 5 of them, and 2 caring parents who love him like their own. I could love him like my own, Remus said with despair. Remus, you must understand that when all of this was happening, you were mourning. I couldn't put that burden on you. The tired werewolf shook his head sadly. His eyes widened, however, when he realized something that his former headmaster had said. Albus, yes? You said it was hard to check on Harry when you went to the Cullens. That I did. It's quite hard to spy on vampires, after all. What? Esme gently lifted the blanket off her sleeping child and picked him up. Harry groaned as he wrapped his arms and legs around her. "Open those beautiful eyes, baby," she cooed. He shook his head and sighed. She bounced him up and down as she walked down the stairs to join the others. "You are my sunshine, my only sunshine," she sang. Harry turned his face away from her with a grumble. "Come now, baby. You are my sunshine, my only sunshine." He brought a fist up to his eyes and rubbed them tiredly. "Make me happy," he responded with a slur. Carlisle looked up once they entered the room and smiled. "When skies are gray." "You'll never know, dear," she continued before bending down and kissing Harry's scarred forehead, "how much I love you. Please don't take my—" Harry looked up at them. When they didn't say anything, he frowned. "You forgot! Again!" "Oh, no, ask me," Carlisle cried. "We forgot the last words of the song again." "Oh dear, Carlisle, we'll need Harry's help again." Harry rolled his eyes. "This time only," he demanded. They nodded their heads. "Sunshine away." "What a beautiful voice my brother has," Alice grinned. "But it's breakfast time for the human boy," Harry frowned. Why did they always call him that? When a plate of eggs was set before him, he couldn't seem to care anymore. "Oh no," the booming voice sounded. "Monster Harry is going to attack Eggsville." Harry giggled as Emmett picked him off his high chair and held him above the plate. He bent down and began to chomp at the eggs, using nothing but his mouth. "Nom, nom, nom." "Emmett!" Esme scolded. "Put him down. We aren't raising him to be a barbarian." The others walked into the room and sat around him while he ate. He finished quickly, loving his mother's cooking. "Done," he said. She nodded in agreement. "Okay, Harry, it's time for you to take a bath. Who would you like to do it for you today?" Rosalie, Alice, and Esme waited for his answer. He pointed a finger at Rosalie. She beamed as she picked him up. "Remember what to dress him up in, Rose," Emmett reminded her. "We're going to teach him a new game today." "What are you teaching him?" Carlisle asked, as Esme cleared the table. Carmen and Eleazar listened in interest. "Football," Jasper answered happily. The plate in Esme's hand shattered and Carmen flinched as the pieces of porcelain hit the floor. "I'm so sorry," she apologized as she bent down and cleaned it. "It's not a problem, dear," Carmen laughed. "I would have reacted the same way." "You are not teaching him football. He's only 2. No harm will come from it, Mommy dearest," Alice grinned. Rose patted the top of Emmett's head as if he were a pup. "I'm sure it will all be fine." Remus sat in a daze. "So you're trying to tell me that his family is a coven of vegetarian vampires?" "That's what they call themselves," Dumbledore cut in. "I think it's a rather funny joke. And they're raising him as if there's nothing wrong." "Yes. And why do you think this is better for Harry again?" "Simple." "Stop saying that. There is nothing simple about this situation." Dumbledore sighed. "Remus, understand this. The Cullens are not like any other coven. They don't feed off humans, and in that way they can provide Harry with a caring family, but they're also like every other vampire in their strength and power. That kind of protection could only be dreamed of until now. If that isn't enough, unless Harry starts a fire, they can't be harmed by his random spouts of accidental magic. I'm going to be sending someone over to meet them and speak to them, but they being part of the magical world might help Harry. Of course, that's if they know anything about the magical world." "Why wouldn't they?" Remus asked. "Well, you know of the vampire royalty, the Volturi, of course. We learned of them briefly in data. Well, they were entirely unhappy with the wizarding world. Many vampires were killed off because of us wizards. We were merely defending innocent lives, but that's not the way the vampires saw it. We were destroying their way of life. That's why the only vampires that know of the wizarding world aren't exactly on the light side. Our Volturi never wants to be involved with us again, but he didn't stop the many vampires that were sided with Voldemort. He saw it as his form of revenge. Also, knowing that some witches and wizards are werewolves hit a nerve." Remus flinched. "Don't take it personally, Remus. There is supposedly a tribe of werewolves, but not a real kind. More like shapeshifters. They phase out of their own will, never needing the full moon. Vampires despise them, and are equally hated back. I heard they smell quite horrid to each other as well." He managed to chuckle. "But Harry, he's safe?" "Quite. What if the Volturi finds out the Cullens are raising a wizard?" "I don't think you should worry about that, Remus." He frowned. "Why not?" Dumbledore stood. "It's quite simple, really." Remus rolled his eyes. "When the Cullens are sure that myths of the wizarding world are true and that Harry really is a wizard," he turned to Remus happily. They're going to defend him with the core of their beings. And how do you know this? Dumbledore picked up a paper of his desk. Simple. He placed it in Remus's hand. I have faith in what you'll say when you report to me. What? He asked in confusion before he disappeared. The old headmaster picked up a lemon drop and popped it into his mouth. I hope real werewolves smell better than those shapeshifters. Grrr. Harry and Emmett scratched at the air as they did a victory dance. Another touchdown. To be fair to the other team, Emmett was a cheater. He immediately went on Harry's team, knowing that everyone would allow him to win. Daddy, grrr, Harry demanded. Carlisle laughed as he shook his legs and raised his hands up as well. Edward rolled his eyes. Just wait until you're old enough to be tackled, he teased Harry. No one will be tackling anyone. Esme shouted, Flag football is enough to give me an immortal woman a heart attack. Break time, Harry, Rose called. Come in for cookies. Cookies, he cheered. He began walking when everyone stopped and looked up at the sky. Something was whirling down at a terribly fast speed. Straight above Harry, they all screamed his name, and he stopped, not realizing what was going on. Carlisle jet across and grabbed his son, shielding him underneath his body. He looked up in shock to see a man had appeared and fell clumsily onto the ground. That ridiculous old coot! He could have warned me! Everyone fell into a defensive stance around Harry, and when Carlisle sniffed the air, he understood why. Although the scent wasn't horribly mortifying, Carlisle could smell the wolf in the man. He got up and stood in front of his family, Kate and Edward by his side. Who are you? The haggard man looked up. His face was tired and scarred, while his old clothes hung loosely around his shoulders. He glared at them. Who am I? Who the bloody hell are you? Then he took a deep breath through his nose, and his eyes narrowed even further. He looked at the crumpled piece of paper in his hands and opened it. With a laugh, he stood. Everyone crouched down, ready to fight. How did he even know where you guys live? This definitely isn't England. Oh well, anyway, I thought there were only 7 Cullens. Who are all the others then? Carlisle tilted his head. How do you know of us? My name is Remus Lupin, and I believe I'm supposed to give this to you. Carlisle took the paper cautiously. To the Cullens, he glanced at his family. Thank you for taking Harry in when no one else would. It isn't signed. It doesn't have to be. You wrote it? No, but you can say the message is from me too. Remus sniffed quickly and smiled. Kib. Harry wiggled out of the tight circle that was formed around him. Only one person called him Cabe, and that was Uncle Mooney, but Harry had forgotten about him. He was easily distracted by his life with the Cullens. He smiled at the old man. There he is, Remus said proudly. He kneeled down, knowing that the others were trying to get Harry back behind them. What a handsome young man you turned out to be. Just like your father said you would. My, Harry, you look just like James. Just like Prongs. Harry's eyes lit up in recognition. Prongs, Uncle Mooney. A big smile was plastered on the man's face. I'm glad to see you haven't forgotten about this old dog. Harry broke into a run and flew into Remus's arms, laughing. Esme stepped forward, worriedly. Carlisle held her hand, and together they walked over to the two. Remus stood. We should talk. Harry, do you want to get those cookies? With Rose, the boy reluctantly walked over to his sister, and he was brought into the house. It would be safe to assume you're his uncle? No wave that Jasper sent could break through the tension between vampire and werewolf. Not by blood, Remus answered before looking down sadly. I was one of his father's best friends. Could you give us insight to Harry's past? Esme begged. Remus watched as Harry's siblings coddled him in the kitchen. He smiled, happy to see the child so joyous. Although he knew everyone in the house could hear him and would be listening, he found a little comfort in having just Carlisle and Esme in front of him. He sighed. I'm sorry if I smell bad, he started, trying to break the tension. It worked perfectly. Everyone in the house but Harry laughed. Carlisle threw an arm around Esme's shoulders. Trust us, Remus, he answered. If you smelled bad, you would have heard it from my children once you hit the ground. You smell just fine. That's reassuring, he muttered. The couple before him laughed once more. He cleared his throat and shoved his hand in his pocket, toying with the idea of showing them his wand or not. I believe that vampires have a myth of something called the wizarding world. Correct? Esme looked at her husband questioningly. He nodded. I've heard of it once before, but I never told my family.
What is it about? She asked.
Well, it said that wizards and witches would take vampire lives in hopes that they could save innocent humans. And it's true, Remus cut in. Although vampires aren't the largest problem of the wizarding world, it's still a part of what happened. So everything that Edward saw in Harry's mind, it was true. Saw it in his mind, he questioned. You are aware that some vampires have powers? Remus nodded at her question. Edward is a mind reader. He saw many things, from floating objects to people holding twigs. Wands, he grinned, taking his own out of his pocket. Wingardium Leviosa. The two were astounded as the side table began floating. So, now that you know the wizarding world is real, you must surely understand what Harry is. A wizard, Carlisle nodded, and a powerful one at that. If he is already performing magic. Remus tilted his head. Well, many babies do accidental magic at a young age, but you're correct about Harry being powerful. Extremely powerful, even. Why? Phasma asked. He quieted and looked at the child that was now running around the hallway. We're just like the Muggle reality, the non-magic people, that is. We have good guys and bad ones. As you saw, we perform magic by summoning it from inside of us with our wands and saying spells and incantations. He stopped and looked back at the two vampires who adopted his cub. We have many spells, Mr. and Mrs. Cullen. Please, Carlisle said politely, call us by our names. Remus smiled grimly. As I was saying, we have an innumerable amount of spells, but there are 3 that can send any wizard or witch into panic. They're called unforgivables, for they truly are unforgivable. Anyone who dares to use them will be thrown into Azkaban, the wizarding prison. He flinched when he said that. No one ever escapes. Ever. Esme reached over and patted his shoulder. The unforgivables, she asked, trying to get his mind off of whatever was bothering him about Azkaban. Remus nodded. The first is the Cruciatus Curse. It inflicts unimaginable pain on the victim of the curse, but it can only work if your desire to cause pain is pure. My old school friends, the Longbottoms, were tortured into insanity by this curse. They left behind a son, Neville, born on the same day as Harry. Carlisle held on to Esme tightly. What if this is the fate that Harry's parents fell into? The second unforgivable is the Imperious Curse. The person who is put under the curse is made to obey any spoken or unspoken command. The caster gives to them. The third is the Killing Curse. There's no way to block it. The only way to save yourself is if you dodge out of its way. Lily and James Potter suffered from this curse. Oh God, that must have been what Edward saw in Harry's mind, Esme whispered. When it came to Harry's parents, all Edward could ever see was a green light hitting a woman. The werewolf quickly wiped a tear that fell onto his cheek. Right, that's exactly what the Killing Curse looks like. A bright green light. In all of history, there has only been one survivor of this curse. Who? Carlisle asked. Remus leaned back on the sofa. Harry James Potter. Remus was able to lay down the basics of the wizarding world. Schools, products, magical creatures, even candy, everything but the war. He had decided on saving that for last. He was able to stray away from the conversation when Harry came running in. He listened to Harry babble on about the Cullens and the silly antics he got into with his siblings. Uncle Mooney, he suddenly questioned. Remus nodded. Where's Uncle Padfoot? His eyes hardened and his fists clenched. Tanya was quick to understand something happened with this Padfoot. She picked Harry up and walked out. How do you feel for ice cream, Harry? They heard her say before the two disappeared, leaving the Cullens and Hales alone. Remus was sitting on the couch, silently thinking. That bloody bastard, he whispered to himself. Can you tell us what exactly happened to Harry, Remus? Esme asked quietly. He's the only one that survived the Killing Curse. Is that how he got that scar? He turned to look at the family. The wizarding world was being torn apart by a war. Those who followed a dark wizard, one worthy enough to call himself the Dark Lord, and those who opposed him, those who followed him, were called Death Eaters. He who must not be named? Edward questioned after looking into Remus's thoughts. A dark laugh filled the room. That is what we were reduced to. Only a few could say his name, but most, it wasn't rare to find someone who would yell at you if you ever said his name. V. Remus closed his eyes. I'm sorry, I must look mighty cowardly right now. It's fine, please continue, Rosalie told him. He nodded. The war was getting very intense. A prophecy was made that a child was to be born, and only that child could defeat the Dark Lord. The prophecy was specific, and it only fit 2 children, one being Harry and the other being Neville Longbottom. They waited for him to continue. The parents of said child supposedly defied the Dark Lord 3 times. The Potters and the Longbottoms both did so. The child was to be born as the 7th month died. Neville's birthday was on July 30th, and Harry was born a day after. That means that Harry's real birthday is July 31st. Emmett cut in. Correct. Wait, Ismay cut in, these Death Eaters, were they the ones who used the Cruciatus curse on the Longbottoms? Remus grinned. I like when I'm talking to people who can think fast. We were a close group of friends, James, Harry's father of course, Sirius Black, Peter Pettigrew, and me. We were friends since our first year in Hogwarts. When they found out I was a werewolf, they were devoted enough to learn a certain magic that allowed them to turn into animals, so on every full moon night, they could help me. He laughed suddenly. Poor James was having such bad luck with Lily in the beginning. See, I hate to admit it, but we made a few bad choices in Hogwarts, and one of them was bullying a boy named Severus Snape. He was one of Lily's friends, and when she found out she was anything but pleased, it wasn't until our 7th year that Lily finally gave James a chance. And we're glad she did. Alice cut in with a fond smile on her face. We wouldn't have Harry if she didn't. Completely agreed, the werewolf responded. It was after Lily and James got married that we found out about this prophecy, when she was pregnant with him. If I remember that right, James was already a wanted man. Many dark wizards were out to get him. He was an Auror after all, a profession that could be compared to the Muggle policeman, so they decided to go into hiding. Their location, thanks to magic, could never be known or found unless their secret keeper gave the information out. A secret keeper isn't just anyone. It's a person you know you can trust with your life. Unfortunately, James and Lily chose the wrong person. Who did they choose? Remus's eyes turned quickly from amber to black. He let out a heavy breath. Sirius. They stared in confusion, but you said he was one of your best friends. That's what we thought. We didn't know that scumbag traitor was working for the you-know-who the entire time. He went to his precious master and told him where Lily and James were hiding, but that wasn't enough for him. He found Peter as well and murdered him, along with 12 Muggle witnesses. He blew up the street for the love of Merlin. All that was left of Peter was a finger, a sodding finger. Did he escape? Edward asked angrily. No. Remus laughed mirthlessly. The Oros showed up and arrested him. He was thrown into Azkaban without a trial. Dumbledore told me as they dragged him away, he was laughing hysterically. Laughing? We were his friends. He was Harry's godfather. Tears began flowing from his eyes. We trusted him. Esme slowly walked over and threw an arm over the weeping man. I hope he rots, Emmett muttered quietly. So you know who killed Lily and James? Carlisle asked. When Remus nodded, he continued. So you know who obviously went there to kill Harry? How did Harry survive? I just don't understand. None of us do, Remus stuttered. Well, when you know who murdered Lily, she gave a sacrifice of love for her son. This created some form of protection for him, and the curse rebounded, shattering the Dark Lord's soul into millions. The reason that Harry has that scar is because, through that, he ended up with some of the Dark Lord's powers. Powers? Esme asked in alarm, as in the dark arts? Well, some, I guess, falls, his fists clenched as he forced the words out. Voldemort. He had some other special powers as well. We don't know if it will appear in Harry. Like what? Parseltongue. The gift of talking to snakes. Edward shot up in alarm. What? He began sheepishly. On Mother's Day, when we were still in England, I took him outside to pick some flowers from the backyard. A garden snake came slithering out of a bush, hissing all its way, and Harry began hiss back. I thought he was just fooling around, copying sounds and all. You didn't think of telling us this? Carlisle asked in annoyance. I didn't think anything of it, he answered sheepishly. All of you, he said, turning to his family, if anyone sees something unusual that Harry is doing, you'll tell Esme Remus, or I immediately. Understood, he sighed, before turning back to Remus. So this Dark Lord just vanished? He clarified. Remus nodded. According to Dumbledore, I told you about him, right? The one who gave Harry to the Dursleys? Wrote that little message to you? Set me here with no warning? They laughed, but agreed. Well, him and of course, the tales of the boy who lived. Yes, he just disappeared. He shook his head with a roll of eyes. Is that the title the Wizarding World gave Harry, the boy who lived? Yes, they worship him from the top of his head to the dirt under his shoe. That's the only thing I can agree on with Dumbledore. Harry should stay away from the Wizarding World because once they see that scar, everyone will know who he is. They'll shower him with gifts, people who don't know him. He can't have that fame go to his head. Harry's too innocent to be tainted by such idiocy. They'll never be able to see Harry for who he is. All they will see is their hero and protector. Even with him away right now, do you know what you're dealing with? He looked into every face before him. If you know who were to ever return, they would definitely call on him. If someone dies, they will blame him. Harry can do absolutely nothing wrong, and they will turn their backs and alienate him. It will be hard for Harry to find true friends if you let him go to Hogwarts. Esme looked as if her heart were breaking. I need to know you're ready for this, that you're willing to fight through all of this for him. Can you fight against the Volturi to protect him? Are you ready for your son's heart to be broken? Are you prepared to have your own heart broken? When you have to hold your crying son at nights when he can't sleep? Can you handle watching a world build Harry up, then tear him down over and over and over again? Esme began dry sobbing. She got up and ran out of the room. Harry, they heard her call. A soft voice was heard, and the pattering of feet alerted that he was near. Oh, baby, she cried. Remus felt guilt wash over him. Jasper's stare turned to him. Don't, he stated. Don't feel guilty. We needed to know what we got ourselves into. Alice nodded in agreement, gripping her husband's hand tightly. Emmett, who had been sitting next to Remus, patted the man's back. It's okay, Mutt. Emmett, Edward groaned. Must you be so rude? Remus laughed in response. It's fine, Edward. I don't mind. It's better to be called a mutt than what others have called me. Alice couldn't stop herself. Did people beat you up? Is that why your clothes are so ugly? Alice, Carlisle said in horror. Smee, standing in the doorway with a mortified look on her face. Harry was in her arms, seemingly unaware of anything that anyone was saying. Apologize. No, please don't, he cut in. It's fine. I completely agree. These clothes are terrible. Then why do you wear them? She asked desperately. I don't have money to buy any. You see, like I said before, some magical creatures are thought of as dark ones. Unfortunately, werewolves are part of that group. It's hard for me to find a job, and although some of my bosses didn't know at first, they eventually found out and fired me. That's horrid. He nodded sadly. I'm revolted to say that I depended on my friends greatly. I'm ashamed at the lengths they had to go for me, but that's why I'm so grateful for them. They truly did care for me. Yes, well, Alice pursed her lips before she gave him a big grin. It's a good thing I saw you before you came. I went shopping once I saw that sorry outfit. Alice, Carlisle shouted again. Why didn't you tell us? What good is a seer that doesn't tell us anything? Edward hissed. We were close to ripping his head off the first time we saw him, and I thought you had trouble with your visions when a werewolf comes into the picture. But he's a real one, not those phony baloney ones, so it wouldn't give me as much trouble, would it? That still doesn't answer why you didn't tell us. However, it does answer why whenever Remus would say something, you just repeat it in your thoughts. I wanted to be a surprise. What a nice surprise, Rosalie drawled sarcastically. Well, I didn't know that part. He was unsure if he would tell us about Harry or not, so his future kept changing. You could have at least told us what was clear. What's the fun in that? We're not talking about enjoyment, we're talking about knowledge. Well, with that statement, one would think you liked school. Daddy, Rosalie wants to go to high school again. Shut up, you little nuisance. Are they always like this? Remus asked Carlisle. Esme was still cuddling with Harry, afraid to let her son go. Carlisle shook his head. It's surprising how much more catty they can get. Wow, Remus? When you don't look so shaggy, you're quite handsome, he laughed when he heard Esme shouted at Alice from downstairs. After a night of rest, he didn't look as tired, so he couldn't help but agree with what Alice told him. Simple jeans and a blue zip sweater. He didn't look half bad. When you go out, you're gonna have to beat women off you with a stick. Oh dear, Alice, I couldn't date if I wanted to. And why do you say that? She questioned him as she took his hand and began leading him back down. Let's not forget my monthly problem. You're not a woman, so what could you possibly be talking about? She teased. He shook his head in disbelief. He hadn't been this happy in 2 years. Dumbledore was right. This family was perfect for his little cub. Why Remus, he heard. He looked up and blushed when he saw Tanya smiling at him as she passed to go back up to her room. Alice was right, but maybe you'll need a crowbar. A stick will break easily. Quite handsome, Eleazar nodded. You looked like you went through hell the first time you got here. Not quite, but pretty close, he muttered. Eleazar made to apologize, but Remus raised his hand and waved it off. It's fine. You did a good job for a little idiot, Rosalie told her sister. Alice glared up at her. Can we please move the attention away from me? Remus pleaded. Edward snorted. Unlikely. Alice will make sure attention is always on you. She takes pride in her work, and until she gets a new one, you're going to be her little Ken doll. I take that little comment personally for him, Alice cut in. If he's little, then I must be microscopic, but Edward is right. You're my fun little project now. We just met him yesterday. Don't you think you should give him time to breathe? I've already seen him becoming part of our family. Why wait? Before Edward could answer, she quickly cut him off. Now, before she left with Carlisle to hunt, Osme told me to tell you guys that she wants one of us to wake Harry up. I'll do it, Emmett called. Let me, Jasper said, politely. I want to do it, Rosalie told them. Edward shook his head. May I? I feel like bringing him to the piano today. Rock, paper, scissors for it, Alice sang. He pinched the bridge of his nose. Can't you just tell us who wins? I do! Excellent! Time to wake the human. Remus laughed as he followed her up the stairs, eager to get his first view of Harry's room. He smiled when he saw that the Denalis had prepared one for him. Fully decorated, the walls were decked out in a sky blue with white paint sponged on to look like clouds. 2 toy boxes were in the room, sitting at opposite corners, and a dresser stood across from his bed to keep hold all of his clothes. Harry was peacefully sleeping on a giant race car bed, his blanket stretching up to cover his mouth. Alice tiptoed towards the snoozing boy and began tickling his sides. Wakey, wakey, love. Harry began squirming, and he hid his smile as he turned away from her. He pulled the blanket over his head when he realized that Alice wasn't going to leave. What would you like for breakfast? I don't know how to cook that, silly. A quiet giggle reached the werewolf's ears. Sleep. Come, baby cakes. Look, Uncle Mooney is here. The boy groaned and began thrashing around. Want to sleep? Harry, she said sternly. I'll get Mother. She knew her threat wasn't real since the couple was out, but the boy instantly stopped, and although he was whining, got up. He smiled sleepily at Remus before tumbling off his bed and clumsily making his way to the bathroom. Someone better go after him. He's gonna mistaken Tanya's room for the bathroom, and she'll be changing. The two heard Tanya squeal in her room as she quickly moved to lock the door. It'll be too late. No. Harry. Harry's screams followed. Mommy? He shrieked. Oh my God, I'm so sorry. Alice frowned. I didn't see this coming. They quickly walked into the hallway to see Harry on the ground. Tanya, what did you do? I don't know. I wasn't thinking. Her pleas of forgiveness were drowned out by Harry's crying. Oh God, she moaned, throwing her hands over her face. She quickly slammed her door when she realized she was still half-dressed. Remus kneeled down, ignoring those who ascended the stairs and the others who walked out of their rooms. I didn't mean to push him, they heard Tanya shout through her door. You did what? Rosalie hissed, glaring at the door. Oh dear, Remus murmured. Harry has quite a large bump on his head. He lifted his shirt up, and a bruise on his stomach from where Tanya pushed him. Open this door, Tanya. Rena demanded. Oh, but I didn't mean to, she answered. Tanya. I hope you drown in your guilt, Rosalie growled. Ah, come on, Rosie, Emmett said, trying to soothe the situation. He picked his little brother up and began to bounce him up and down to try and stop his tears. He was going to get hurt eventually. The whole point of us existing in his life is that, so he doesn't get hurt. And plus, I'd rather have him being hurt by other humans than by super-strength vampire idiots. Hey, Tanya defended herself as she pulled the door open. She was fully clothed, and her face was looking down in shame. Well, you are. Harry's sobs were still strong as he gripped Emmett's shoulders tightly. If Harry hadn't been injured, it would look like quite a funny scene. Emmett was far too wide for Harry's arms and legs to wrap around him. It looked as if someone had glued the boy to the front of Emmett, his arms and legs spreading around the vampire as far as they could go. It was quite comical indeed. Ah, now little bro, Emmett cooed. It's okay. Tanya didn't mean to hurt you. Harry's bawling only grew louder when Edward touched his head to see how large the bump was. The bronze-haired vampire flinched. Sorry, little one. If your hair wasn't so, well, I would have seen it better. You could have just asked me, Remus cut in, sardonically. Edward shot him a glare. Daddy, Remus felt a knife pierce his heart. He knew that he had accepted the family and trusted them, but in his heart it was still hard to hear Harry refer to anyone as his parents, if they weren't James and Lily. Edward placed a hand on his shoulder. Oh, right, the mind reader. Remus gave him a sad smile. It's okay, he whispered. Remus nodded in gratitude. Oh, sweetheart, they're out right now, Kate whispered to Harry as he continued to cry for Carlisle. They'll come back soon. Maybe one of us should call them, Jasper suggested quietly. Esme wouldn't be happy to know that we didn't call her. Wait, Emmett told them. Harry was becoming quieter. After a few more moments, his hiccups and sniffles sounded only once every few minutes. You okay, bud? Harry shook his head against Emmett's chest. Come on, kiddo. You're a man. Men don't cry. We're tough. Draw. Tears continued to leak out of Harry's eyes as the aching bump on his head pounded away. Does it still hurt? He asked curiously, raising a hand to touch it. Emmett, don't, Alice shouted, but his fingers had already brushed it. Harry let out a yelp as he began weeping loudly again. Oops. Esme held a lollipop in front of Harry's face. He smiled happily and reached out for it, but she pulled back. Please, he asked. She kissed his cheek and gave it to him. With a squeal, he popped it into his mouth and began swaying his head with a hum. Carlisle frowned, trying to put the ice back on Harry's head. Hurts, he whined as he pushed the hand away. It's the only way to get rid of that ugly bump, son, Carlisle explained. Harry continued to dodge away from his hand. You have to. He shook his head. No. Harry, I know. Harry, stop. Remus laughed as he watched the ice quickly melt in Carlisle's hands. Harry looked away, innocently licking his lollipop. Harry Cullen. Harry James Cullen, if you want to be assertive. Alice piped. How do you expect me to make the bump go away? Carlisle asked as he walked into the kitchen to get more ice. You wouldn't happen to know any spells, would you, Remus? I'm sorry, but I don't. And Albus sent me here without any of my belongings, so I couldn't look it up if I wanted to. It's all right, Esme told him as she picked Harry up and set him on her lap. Can you please let us put the ice back on, that nasty golf ball you have on your head? Mama. He laughed loudly. What? Look at it! It's a big golf ball! No. Yes, it is. Not. I wonder if there's a way to contact Dumbledore. The flu isn't set up in this house. I don't even have flu powder. I've never owned an owl. Remus continued to mutter to himself, trying to figure out how to send a letter to the man. He stood and began pacing. I could always try using Muggle mail, but who would I send it to? The telephone. Or not. Maybe there's a little wizard village around here. Okay, Harry. Carlisle warned. If you melt this one, I'm taking away the piano. Is that understood? Harry's wide eyes stared up at his father. It was usually Carlisle that was easily swayed, but the injury had turned him into full doctor mode. The boy crossed his arms and pouted, looking at anything but the blonde vampire. Carlisle sighed and sat next to him before softly pressing the ice down. Harry flinched and his lollipop dropped down to the carpet. Oh dear. Esme sighed. I'll just get you another one. For now, maybe a popsicle? She asked as she made her way to the kitchen. Are you okay now, darling? Harry frowned but nodded his head. Cold, he stated. Carlisle laughed. Yes, it's cold. Don't worry, little one. It'll get better soon. Remus looked up, about to ask a question when Alice raised her hand. Don't move, she told him. He looked at her questioningly before he jumped back in, surprise, when a chest and a few baggages appeared before him. She smiled before turning back to read her magazine. Well, what do you know? Remus laughed. A piece of parchment was pinned down on one of the bags. He picked it up and read it out loud. I deeply apologize for forgetting to send your belongings after you. Albus. Crazy Coot knows just when he's needed. Although it had been 2 years, the Cullens had grown terribly protective of Harry. If Rosalie was ever near, she would make sure that Tanya wasn't. Emmett always carried Harry up and down stairs. Edward, like Rosalie, had a problem trusting anyone with handling Harry. He managed to get in trouble for accusing Carlisle of malpractice when he was giving Harry a routine checkup. Alice made sure she knew every step that Harry made in advance, and if Jasper was with him, he'd calm the emotions of others while Harry passed. It caused others to zone out, so there wasn't a chance of them hurting Harry, but like Edward, got Jasper into trouble every time he did it. Carlisle and Esme had gone into strict parent mode, but of course there were times when they couldn't help but be influenced by Emerald Puppy Dog Eyes. Remus was just as, or even more, protective than all of them combined. Although the family had been raising him for 3 years already, Remus had known the boy since Harry was minutes old. Harry had been his cub since James first brought him out of that hospital room. "Sweetie, I know it's your birthday, but Daddy, Uncle Remy, and I need to talk to you." "Did you enjoy your birthday party, Harry?" Esme asked as she sat him down next to her. He nodded energetically. "Which present did you like the most?" "Edward's!" he exclaimed. She smiled. Of course he would have liked Edward's the best. He had bought Harry a brand new Showkin baby grand piano. She brushed his hair out away from his eyes. "Sweetie, I know it's your birthday, but Daddy, Uncle Remy, and I need to talk to you." His eyes widened. "I didn't do anything." "What?" "Sweetie, you aren't in trouble." "I swear I didn't mean it. Emmett told me Rose's dress would be prettier if I painted it." "What?" They both heard from downstairs. Remus and Carlisle flinched as they walked into Harry's room. "Sweetie," I didn't think he would really. "Emmett McCarty." Harry quickly buried himself under his blanket when they heard Rosalie storming up the steps. A bedroom door slammed open before a loud shriek sounded. "You sorry excuse for a man. What were you thinking? This is my favorite dress." Esme desperately tried to calm Harry, but the boy began to sob. "Harry, you aren't in trouble," she told him firmly as she pulled the blanket off of him. "But Rosie is really angry," he stuttered. Rosalie walked into the room swiftly, and when Harry saw her, he made his way to hide behind his mother. "Harry, I'm not angry at you, I'm angry at your fool brother," she muttered. "So don't worry, little one, it's Emmett that's going to get in trouble tonight." "Oh, Rose." They heard Emmett shout from downstairs. "What you did is entirely inexcusable," she shrieked, stomping her way down the stairs. Carlisle ruffled Harry's hair gently. "We promise you aren't in trouble, child. We just have a little surprise for you." "You promise Rosie isn't angry with me?" "We promise," Remus told him. "Now, about that little surprise." Harry nodded his head, looking up at them. Carlisle?" Well, Harry, you're a wizard," he blurted out. "Oh, so that's what you meant by telling him gently," Remus stated him sarcastically. "You weren't much help." "Well, I could have done better than just saying it, like it was any old thing. If you could have done so much better than... Boys!" Esme scolded. She turned back to Harry and smiled. "Now I know this must be confusing, sweetheart, but we're here to explain. You know how there are times when something happens because you want it to happen." Harry nodded his head slowly. "Not everyone can do that, love. But you, my special little boy," she stated with pride. "You're a special person who has magic inside. Uncle Remy is a wizard too, and when you're older you'll be able to control it just like Remus." He tilted his head and opened his mouth. "Like bunnies?" Remus laughed. "No, those are magicians, Kilb. They're non-magic people, muggles, who pretend to have magic." "Oh, it's why Aunt Carmen got you robes for your birthday. Those are wizard robes and a Quidditch outfit. Quidditch is a game that wizards and witches play." "But where did Aunt Carmen get the robes?" he asked, in confusion. "The same place I got you that book," Remus answered him, pointing at Harry's new copy of The Tales of Beetle the Bard. "Remember when Aunt Carmen and Uncle Eleazar sent me to Massachusetts for a vacation? Well, it was also so I could get you some presents from the wizarding community in Salem." He cleared his throat uncomfortably. Carmen and Eleazar had paid him generously for going across the country to buy their gifts for Harry. They had also made sure that Remus could use that time as a real vacation, renting him a private house and his own transportation. He was extremely thankful, but still felt bad at the same time. They told him to think of it as a job they were doing for them, a business trip. "There are wizarding communities all over the world, Harry. When you're old enough, we're going to go to Diagon Alley in England for your school things." "Why can't I use magic now?" "Well, firstly, you'll need a wand. Second, you don't know how to control magic. When you're 11, you'll go to school to learn how." "But I'm going to be in kindergarten soon." "That isn't the same," Carlisle told him. "We sent you to a muggle school. No one there knows about magic, and they can't ever know. This is a secret between all of us, but you can't tell anyone else." "So Rosie and Edward and Emmett and Alice and Jasper know too?" "And so does Carmen, Eleazar, Kate, Irina, and Tanya." He scrunched his nose at Tanya's name. "Now, Harry, she's been very nice to you." "She's a big fat meanie pants." Remus's laughter echoed until Carlisle and Esme sent a glare his way. "That's not a nice thing to say, Harry," he said, the corner of his lips twitching slightly. "It isn't," Esme said, looking Harry straight in the eye. "But we'll talk about that later. For now, we have one more thing to tell you. In the magical world, there are also magical creatures. The Denalis, Carlisle, your siblings and I are vampires. He gasped. Like Dracula. No, Carlisle said quickly. Absolutely not. You bite people! Wait, Harry, let us. You guys bite people. No, biting people isn't nice. Miss Lassiter told me so when I bid Alex for taking my cookie. They don't bite people, Harry, Remus shouted. Yes, they do. I saw it. Dracula bit the girl and then he turned into a bat and flew away, saying, "Ee." Harry, sit down, Carlisle said sternly as he reached out for him. Harry let out a scream. Remus and Usme tried to grab him before he ran out the door, but they didn't realize how fast the boy was going and just missed him. Daddy's gonna bite me. Edward, Alice, Jasper, Rosalie, and Emmett were laughing hysterically as they watched Carlisle try to get Harry out of the cupboard. He locked himself into, Harry, please come out, Carlisle begged. I'm not gonna bite you. A muffled sob sounded from behind the door. Harry, son, please don't cry. But you're gonna bite me, Harry blubbered. I'm not gonna bite you, child. You're just saying that. Carlisle rested his head against the door and closed his eyes. Esme laid a hand on his shoulder while Remus tried to silence the others. Son, I love you so much. I would never bite you. Harry didn't respond. A few more minutes of silence passed. You promise? The boy finally said, opening the door just a bit so that you could see him peeking out. Carlisle looked at him and nodded. Harry let out another sob as he threw the door open and launched himself into his father's arms. I'm sorry, Daddy, he cried. Carlisle held him tightly. I promise you, child, I will never, never let anyone bite you. Pinky promise? Carlisle picked him up before hooking their pinkies together. Pinky promise. How about we tell you more about the kind of vampires we are tomorrow? You need to sleep, son? Harry nodded, resting his head on the shoulder before him. Sorry, Mama, Harry said when he saw Esme. She smiled at him, brushing his hair out of his eyes again. He waved at his brothers and sisters before Carlisle turned the corner to take him back to his room. So you only bite animals? Yes, Harry. And Uncle Mooney is a good werewolf who won't try to eat people either? He glared at Remus suspiciously. I won't try to eat people, he laughed. Harry crossed his arms, looking at all of them from the corner of his eye. I guess it's okay for now. He turned on his heels and pointed a finger at them. But if you bite anybody, I'm gonna be really, really angry. We promise, they all said simultaneously. He sighed and pinched the bridge of his nose like Edward. Now what is for lunch? Esme grinned and picked him up. I made you macaroni and cheese. That's one of my favorites. I know, little prince. When they disappeared into the kitchen, Carlisle dropped onto the sofa in relief. Thank God, we got through this. Carlisle. Alice pulled him off the couch as a green flame erupted from the fireplace. Oh dear, the voice chuckled. They vampires looked up and saw a man who was wearing a long purple robe. He adjusted a tall hat on his head before brushing the dust out of his beard. It seems you don't use this fireplace much, obviously. Tanya hissed as she walked into the room. We're vampires. Now who the hell are you? Why, dear girl? I mean no harm. Relax, Tanya, Remus smiled as he walked forward to shake the man's hand. It's good to see you again, Albus. You too, Remus. Where is little Harry? He's in the kitchen eating lunch, Carlisle spoke, stepping forward to greet the man. I've heard much about you, Mr. Dumbledore. It's a pleasure to meet you. The pleasure is all mine, Albus's eyes twinkled as he looked at Carlisle. So this is the man who took Harry in so unselfishly. It is pleasing to see vampires who strive for a better way of living. Thank you, he answered. I don't mean to be rude, but why are you visiting us? Well, now that you've told Harry about magic, Remus told me you were planning on telling him on his birthday. I wanted your family to come visit Hogwarts and become comfortable with magic. If you're up to it, of course. I'm sure you'll love the campus, and I'll give you room and board. That's so much to give, Esme said as she walked in. Harry was still in the kitchen. Esme nodded at Tanya, who stood and walked to the kitchen to watch him. How would we repay you? Albus laughed. Why do you think I want something in return? Remus looked at him suspiciously. What is it, Albus? He smiled softly. I would like for Harry to meet another wizard his age, so he's at least familiar with magic and can be introduced to it at a young age. Like whom? He growled. Every family out there wants to worship the boy. I know of one who wouldn't, and they are the Weasleys, of course. Remus's eyes widened as he smiled in happiness. Albus, you genius. Why hadn't I thought of them before? Who are the Weasleys? Rosalie asked. They're a pure-blood family who fought against you-know-who during the war. Remus answered them. Molly and Arthur are some of the kindest people you'll ever meet. They had 6 children the last time I saw them, the youngest being Ronald. He's the one who is Harry's age. They had Ginevra a year later, Albus told him. He looked up in surprise. The first Weasley girl in years. They're quite proud. Oh, Harry would love to meet them. Esme smiled. It's the beginning of August, Carlisle. Wouldn't it be lovely to spend a month in England before coming back for school? His eyebrows furrowed while he thought, I guess it would be okay. Edward, Jasper, and Emmett looked at each other. Emmett cleared his throat. Would there be anything fun to do at Hogwarts? Well, you are magical creatures, yes? Albus asked. They nodded. I'm sure you can learn how to fly a broom, and there are no muggles around, so you could do it in the daytime. Nice. Emmett boomed, giving Jasper a high five. Jasper rolled his eyes as he turned back to Alice. Would there be any villages around Hogwarts? Alice asked. Hogsmeade is where the students go during school time. I'm sure you'll love it there. They have all sorts of clothing stores around, although they mostly sell wizard attire. You read my mind like an open book, she exclaimed as she grasped Rosalie's arm with a squeal. I vote on a yes to England, she told Carlisle. Jasper nodded with her. Rosalie shrugged, but Emmett's head was bobbing up and down. Edward shrugged before nodding his head. Esme smiled at Carlisle. Just think, sweetheart, meeting more humans. We can bring them food when we go over. It's a human custom after all, which means I get to cook for more than 2 people. She clapped her hands before walking back into the kitchen. Harry, we're going on vacation. Huh? The boy shouted in confusion. Come, darling, come. I want you to meet someone. Esmera appeared with Harry in her arms. Sweetheart, this is Albus Dumbledore. He's the principal of the school you're going to go to when you're older. We're going to visit the school so you can learn more about magic. You're going to meet a wizard family, too. Harry's eyes widened in excitement. Really? Other wizards? Albus smiled at him. Would you like to come see the school? Yay. Good, good. You shall meet little Ronald Weasley. He's very excited to meet you as well, Harry. You already spoke to the Weasleys, Remus laughed. Of course I did, Albus smiled. I gave you an offer you couldn't refuse. Carlisle laughed. Apparently, in 3 days, and after a long goodbye to the Denalis, the Cullen family had port-keyed their way to Hogwarts grounds. The speed had fueled adrenaline into them, but had scared poor Harry into tears. Carlisle tried to calm him as he released the portkey and slowly floated onto the ground. Welcome, they heard. The family looked up into the eyes of a large man. Emmett's jaw fell open. You must be the Cullens. I'll look at that. Is that the little Harry I picked up when he was just a year old? Why, yes it is, Hagrid, Remus said with a smirk. If it isn't Remus Lupin, Hagrid exclaimed. How have you been? Just fine, Rubeus. Still the groundskeeper, I see. That I am. I thank Albus Dumbledore every day for giving me this job. His grin stretched across his face. Come on now. I'm sure Porkeen took a lot out of ya. I'll show you to your rooms then. Albus wants Remus to show you guys to the headmaster's office. I'm sure you remember the way. Everyone noticed the sly tone in Hagrid's voice. Remus's eyes lit up with a bittersweet glow. Of course I remember. How can I forget? I got into trouble so many times that I could walk there blindfolded from any spot in Hogwarts. Hagrid laughed loudly before stopping and leaning in. Just thought I should warn you, Remus. Severus is the potions master for Hogwarts, and he's here early to restock Pomfrey's medicine cabinet. You might want to watch out for him. He's been in a sour mood since Albus announced that you'd be coming. Remus blushed sheepishly. Thank you, Hagrid. Is Poppy here as well? That she is. She's quite excited to see you again. He frowned as he picked up the suitcases that the Cullens were carrying. He jerked his head in the direction he was walking in so the others would follow him. Though you might want to watch out for her too. Something about hurting you if you haven't been taking care of yourself. Remus rolled his eyes with a scoff as they entered the castle. That woman... woman what, Mr. Lupin? Everyone stopped and looked at a gray-haired woman standing before them with her arms crossed. She tapped her foot as she waited for Remus's response. He gaped silently before fishing for a coherent sentence. That woman is simply just wonderful. She's just amazing, and I don't know what I'd do without her. She hummed before smiling and walking over to him. Dear Remus, she laughed as she threw her arms around him. It is good to see you again. He smiled at her gently. It is wonderful to see you as well, madame. Now tell me, she said, pushing him aside and looking Carlisle in the eye. Has this boy been taking care of himself after every full moon? Every month he'd leave his bed just to fool around with his friends. I had to start strapping him down. To be fair, that was only once, he said weakly to the others. They laughed at the look on his red face. She glared at him. After you're settled in and you're done speaking to the headmaster, I expect to see you and little Harry in the hospital wing. If you're not, I'll know where to find you. She finished threateningly. She turned to look at the little boy who was staring at her. She smiled softly with a tilt of her head. He looks just like his parents, she told them. You're lucky to have him. Asmi nodded in thanks before Madame Pomfrey walked up the stairs. Emmett stared at her back as she walked away. She's scary, he stated. We've been here for about 5 minutes, and she managed to scare poor Remy mindless. Remus glared at him. That's a sick lie. Hagrid laughed as he patted Remus on the back. Welcome back to Hogwarts. Do you always have to cook? Harry asked. The house elf nodded. Macy and the other house elves always have to cook for students and for teachers, but we like cooking for everyone. Little Harry Potter Cullen, who cooks for you? He continued. He was currently sitting on Remus's lap as the two waited for the rest of the Cullens to find the Great Hall. Macy cooks for Macy. Harry Potter Cullen, sir. Someone else should cook for you, Macy, 'cause you cook all the time. My mama can cook for all of you. Remus smiled at how thoughtful his cub was. Oh, little Harry Potter Cullen, you're too kind to the house elves. Macy wept. Remus cleared his throat gently. Macy, can you find the others and help them get here? They must be lost. Macy nodded with a quick goodbye to Harry. Do you like the house elves, Harry? He nodded before taking a bite of his eggs. They're silly. Remus laughed at the boy's statement. It had been 3 days since they arrived at Hogwarts, and everyone was settling in quite easily. The Cullens had told Remus to go ahead of them with Harry so that they could learn the layout of the castle. The werewolf had a feeling that the moving staircases were confusing them, even though their vampire speed could easily get them to the next flight. Harry was quite happy. He loved talking to the portraits and going to Hagrid's hut to play with Fang. He also loved seeing magic before him. His eyes watched every wand wave, and the sound of incantations were music to his ears. Uncle Remy, when do I get to meet Ron? Remus hummed as he chewed his toast. I'm not sure, Kib, he said after swallowing, but we can ask Albus today. Mama said that when you visit a house, you have to bring gifts. Can we buy Ron a gift? He ruffled his hair. Well, actually, Harry, your mother meant that you bring food, usually sweets like cookies. You don't have to worry about getting Ron a gift. Harry frowned, but it would still be nice. Can we get him a gift today? An overwhelming feeling of pride overcame Remus. Sure, Harry. I'll ask Carlisle if we can go to Hogsmeade today. Harry nodded happily before turning back to his breakfast. Do you know what you want to get, Ronald? Harry shrugged. I don't know. What does he like? I don't know either, Harry. Maybe he likes the same things you do. I can get him a football. Remus chuckled. Ronald doesn't know anything about the Muggle world, remember? We have to get him something from the Wizard world. Oh, does the Wizard world have candy? Yes, they do. They have chocolates called chocolate frogs. You have to chase it around before you can eat it. Harry giggled at the notion of chasing candy around. There are many different wizard candies. How about Bertie Bott's? What's that? It's like jelly beans, but it comes in all different flavors, like... Remus grinned slyly. Like what? Like earwax? Harry's nose scrunched up in disgust. We should get him the chocolates. Molly Weasley bustled around the house, trying to make it perfectly clean. Bill, stop leaving your things on the floor. Percy, pick your books up and put them in your room. Charlie, why are all your dragon toys out? Fred, George, leave Ginny alone. Ron sat with his blanket in his arms as he watched his mother run around the house in a mad dash. You don't know when Harry will stop by with his family, so we have to keep it extra clean, she had told him. He got up, dragging his blanket across the floor, and followed his mother into the kitchen. Mummy, can I have pumpkin juice? Of course, Ronald. Ask someone to help you. Ron stared at her before looking around the kitchen curiously. His father was at work, so that wouldn't do. He sighed and went to find Bill. His brother was in the living room, doing his summer homework. Billy, can you get me pumpkin juice? Bill turned with a sad smile. Sorry, Ron, but I really need to concentrate on this. If I don't learn this, Snape is going to kill me when I get back to school. Go find Charlie. I'm sure he'll help you. Ron nodded. Thanks, Billy.
Sorry, Ron.
Ron walked up the stairs carefully and opened Charlie's bedroom door. Charlie, he called. He looked up with a smile. Can you help me get pumpkin juice? Charlie gave Ron a sheepish smile. Sorry, Ron, but Mom wants me to clean my room. Can you wait a bit? I'm thirsty now. The boy pouted. Go find Percy. Ron sighed before walking to Percy's room. Percy made no movement. Percy, can I have pumpkin juice, please? Ronald, I'm reading, he snapped in irritation. He glared before slamming the door. Meanie, he muttered. He knew going to George and Fred wouldn't help anything, so he went back down and sat down in the spot he was before. He turned to find that Ginny was now sitting next to him. You can't help me, can you? He asked. Ginny looked up and began giggling at her older brother. Ron rolled his eyes before a grin settled on his face. He threw an arm around his little sister and fell back on the couch with her. I want to play with Harry already, he told her. Maybe then I wouldn't be so bored or thirsty. Ginny nodded, patting her brother's stomach. And hungry? Yay, and hungry. The two siblings laughed as Ron's stomach growled loudly. Harry was terribly excited. After Remus and he had returned from Hogsmeade, Albus had called them to his office to tell them the Weasleys would be ready the next day. Harry had never been so excited to sleep before. Carlisle and Esme were finding it quite amusing. Once morning came and Emmett went into Harry's room to wake him up. They heard a cry of happiness. Wow, kid. Emmett came running out of the room with Harry on top of his head. Emmett? Esme shrieked in fear that Harry would fall. Someone's eager, Emmett said sarcastically as he tried to pry Harry off of him. Mama, I get to meet Ronald today, Harry shouted happily as he jumped into her arms. Yes, and they invited you over for breakfast, so you need to get ready now, she told him, rushing to the bathroom. A knock at the portrait sounded, and Carlisle went to answer it. Remus was standing there with his hands in his pockets. He was about to speak when he stopped and listened to Harry's laughter echo. He's quite excited, isn't he? Carlisle nodded with a laugh. I just came to say that I'm sorry, but I can't accompany you today. What's wrong? Carlisle asked. He shrugged and looked down. Tonight is the full moon, and I'm feeling a bit restless is all. He patted his shoulder softly. Take care, Remus. Don't worry, I'm sure I can trust that the wolfsbane potion Severus made should work just fine. He takes pride in his work, and this is the first time he's made it. He wouldn't have given it to me otherwise. Unless this is some sick sort of revenge, Carlisle told him grimly. I deserve it, Remus answered miserably. No, you wouldn't, he told his friend firmly. It wasn't your fault at all. How were you to know what Sirius was going to do? Remember that. Remus nodded and looked away. Tell Harry I told him to enjoy himself. I'm sure he'll have fun with the Weasleys. Carlisle watched him walk away before turning back into the room. They all looked up at him with question. Is Remus okay? Alice asked softly. He isn't feeling too bad, is he? Before he could answer her, Harry came running out with a backpack on. Daddy, Mommy is letting me carry the chocolates. Is Uncle Remy coming now? He shook his head. No, son. Uncle Remy feels tired because tonight is the full moon. He has to stay home. Oh, okay, Harry sighed in disappointment. Come on, Raven, Edward said. He picked Harry up and threw him onto his back. Put a smile on that face. You get to meet little Ronald today. Harry smiled hesitantly before gripping Edward's shoulders tightly when he saw the hat portkey. Hold on tight, Raven, he warned before they disappeared from the room. Harry opened his eyes and took a peek of his surroundings. Everything was passing by in a blur. Harry, close your eyes, he heard Rosalie scream. His eyes immediately shut as he fought an upset stomach. Suddenly, the speed began to slow, and he felt the tightening in his stomach vanish. Edward landed perfectly on his feet before setting Harry down. The green-eyed boy looked up to see a red-haired woman gaping at the Cullens. She began. Now, we know about vampires, but it would be best to come in. All of you standing in that huge group can blind someone. They laughed as they followed her in. You must be Esme and Carlisle, she said with a smile. I'm Molly Weasley, and this is my husband, Arthur. Arthur stood and shook their hands. Albus told us you've been living in the Muggle world, he started. Oh, for heaven's sake, Arthur. Molly sighed, pushing him back down onto the seat. This must be little Harry, Molly said happily. Harry nodded and stuck his hand out. Nice to meet you, he told her as he shook her hand. Oh, he's adorable, she told them, and very well-mannered. You've raised him well. Heaven knows how hard Arthur and I tried, but our children can't even give a simple wave. Thank you, Molly, Esme said kindly. We brought cookies for later. I hope they taste all right. Our little critic over here loves them. They look quite delicious, Molly said with a smile. Arthur, show them the living room while Carlisle and Esme stay to help Harry choose what he wants for breakfast. Carlisle nudged Harry towards the table and watched as his son took a seat and placed his hands on the table. Go on, dear, eat up, she said encouragingly. I'll wait for the others, Harry told her. Molly's face lit up. She turned to Esme and Carlisle with her hand on her heart. James and Lily would be so happy to know that their son was raised by you. Thank you, Molly. You're too kind. No, really, she said firmly. I'm happy to see how you've raised Harry. I was afraid that he was going to be spoiled, but you've done a great job as parents. You've done much better, Esme told her. 7 children and all your own. We adopted all of ours, and they were old enough to know the ways of life already. They didn't need our help. Although I wouldn't trade my children for anything, I envy the fact that you get to watch all of your children grow every day. Molly looked as if she could cry, but the sound of running jolted her out of her state. Her eyes narrowed as she made her way into the hallway. Bill, Charlie, stop running. We have guests. Charlie, look. Esme and Carlisle heard the boy whisper. Those birds are right gorgeous. 2 sets of growls reached their ears. Carlisle chuckled as Esme tried to hide her grin. You two, go meet Harry while I get your other brothers. Is Ron up yet? Mom, he's been up since 5 in the morning, Charlie answered her as they walked into the kitchen. Hey there, mate. Harry smiled and waved his hand at them. You're Harry P. Cullen, right? I'm Charlie, and this is my brother William. Stuff it, Charles, Bill glared. You can call me Bill, Harry. Charlie's just being silly. Harry smothered his giggle with his hand. My brother Emmett always calls my brother Eddie, even though Edward doesn't like that. Bill smiled as they sat down across from him. Aren't you going to eat something? Harry shook his head. Mama said I shouldn't eat until everyone is at the table. Charlie raised an eyebrow as he glanced at his brother. Then we'll do the same thing, Har. Percy walked in next. He sighed and took a seat next to his eldest brother. Good morning to everyone. Nice to meet you. Harry, Mr. and Mrs. Cullen. Carlisle and Esme nodded at the polite boy. Fred and George came running in next. Slow down, Percy scolded. You'll get hurt. Fred and George smiled as they went on either side of Harry. Hi there, Harry, they said simultaneously. You're going to be fun to play with the finish together. Harry stared at the two as they took their seats before turning to the other redheads. Do they always do that? He asked lamely. They all laughed before a loud yawn echoed in the room. Mornin', the tiny girl said. Good morning, Ginny, the boy sounded. She's beautiful, Esme told Carlisle. Ginny rubbed her eyes and sat down next to George. She rested her head on the table with a sigh. Where's Ronikins? Fred asked his little sister. Harry's eyes lit up when he saw that they intentionally left the chair next to him open. He's went sleepy again, so Mummy's waking him up. Everyone turned and watched Molly walk down the stairs. He's just changing. He'll be down in a second, love, she told Harry. He smiled brightly as he got out of his chair and stood in front of his parents. Carlisle laid a hand on his shoulder while Esme hooked arms with her husband. After a few minutes, a sleepy redhead walked down slowly. His feet touched the bottom and he stretched his arms up. Ronald, Molly laughed. Fix your shirt. It's on backwards. Ron looked down with wide eyes before his face turned bright red. He quickly turned it and shuffled towards his mother. Mummy, Harry is coming today, right? He asked. He turned around when he heard someone giggle behind him. Harry waved at him shyly. Hi, he merely whispered. Carlisle glanced at Esme with a knowing look. Of course he would be shy when he actually met Ron. Harry quickly took his backpack off and began to dig through it. Mommy says when you go to a house, you have to bring a present. Uncle Remy helped me get this for you. Finally, he pulled a brown package out of his backpack. Sorry, the wrapping is kind of funny, Harry apologized. Ron grinned as he looked at his mother for permission. When she nodded, he reached out with a quiet thanks and opened it. Mummy, Harry got me chocolate frogs, he said happily, before his face turned sour. Can you hold it so Fred and George don't eat it? Dear Ronikins, Fred gasped. Mummy said we have to share with each other, George told him. Ron glared at them before turning back to Harry. Are you hungry? Mummy makes really good breakfast. He took Harry's hand and pulled him towards the table. My mama makes really good breakfast too, Harry smiled. They continued to talk to each other as they began to fill their plates up with food. Molly gave a smile to the two vampires. They could tell their sons would be great friends. And then he showed me exploding snaps, and he told me about the ghoul in his attic. Harry told Remus. The boy had climbed into Remus's hospital bed to tell him all about his time at the Burrow, and then you know what happened, Uncle Mooney? What happened, Keb? Remus smiled. Harry pouted and raised a bandaged finger. Percy's rat Scabbers bit me. He gasped playfully and brought Harry's finger closer to his face. What a mean little rat. With a nod, Harry continued. Ms. Molly got angry and told Percy to put Scabbers away. That's good. You didn't have to see mean old Scabbers anymore. Harry sighed and snuggled against his uncle. Grandpa Albus told them to come here in 2 days. You get to see them this time. Maybe you can turn into Mooney and eat Scabbers. That's disgusting, Harry, Remus told him. I don't eat mean rats like Scabbers. I eat nice ones. They're less acidic and don't give me tummy aches. You're silly, Uncle Mooney. The man chuckled and kissed the boy's cheek. Don't make fun of me. And old. Oi, you're a silly old werewolf. That's it. Remus shouted while turning and tickling Harry's side. Madame Pomfrey quickly ran in to help Harry and make Remus lie back down. Matty Poppy, Harry laughed as he tried to push Remus away. Make him stop.
Mr. Lupin!
The little bugger called me old. And silly. Mr. Lupin, unhand the boy and lie back down. Matty Poppy, Harry begged.
Mr. Lupin.
Mummy! Molly shot up with a scream and looked around wildly until her eyes settled on her youngest son. The boy was grinning happily, already dressed for the day. Mummy, we're going to Hogwarts today. Ronald, she scolded. It's still early. Go back to sleep. He frowned. Mummy, Bill helped everyone get ready. He said it was 11:30. What? She shrieked. Why didn't anyone wake us up? Arthur. The man woke with a start and stared up at his wife. It's 11:30, and we have to be at Hogwarts by 12. His eyes widened as they jumped up and ran around the room. Ronald, go down to Bill and tell him to flu the headmaster. Say that we're going to be a bit late. Ron nodded as he ran down to his brother. An hour later, Arthur was standing by the fireplace, watching as his children flew to Hogwarts. With a smile, he picked Ginny up after all his children had gone and walked into the fireplace. Albus Dumbledore's office, he stated clearly. He met his family on the other side. Dumbledore behind them. Hello, Albus. How are you today? Quite wonderful, Albus smiled. Come along now. Little Harry has been impatiently waiting for Ronald. Ron grinned at the name of his new friend. Where is he? He's in the Great Hall having lunch with his family. With his family? Molly asked in confusion. We have blood pops and goblets of their meal, he finished quietly. Blood pops are for vampires, Ron said as if the others didn't know. Ginny, however, looked at him and nodded, confirming that she was listening. Harry's mummy and daddy and brothers and sisters are vampires. Her mouth formed an O shape. After a few more flights of stairs, they finally arrived at the Great Hall. Harry, Ron shouted as he ran down to the table he was at. Harry smiled at him and pushed Edward to make space for Ron to sit. Hiya, Harry. Hi. Mommy made more cookies. Ron pumped his fist into the air in excitement. Ms. Asme's cookies are yummy. I know, right? Did you eat already? Yeah. Bill made sandwiches while Mummy was sleeping. Harry turned to his mother with pleading eyes. Mummy, I'm full. Can I go play with Ron now? Isme checked Harry's plate to make sure he finished most of his food. Sure, sweetie. Edward stood with a nod. Take them to Remus's room, and then you can come back to finish up. Of course, Asme. Edward smiled at the boys and began walking in long strides, making them run after him. Not that they minded. They were having fun chasing after the vampire. Come on, Raven. Red, try and catch me. Edward ran at human speed while the boys raced to grab him. No fair, you're a vampire, Harry laughed. Come on, younglings. Ron and Harry gave each other a glance before the redhead fell to the ground. Ow, he cried loudly. Edward stopped abruptly and quickly went back to them. Are you... Attack! Harry shouted. Ron flew up, grabbing the front of Edward while Harry jumped on his back. Bring him down. You little scamps. Edward shouted. He held on to Ron and made sure that Harry was secure on his back before zooming down the hallways. Laughter bounced off the walls, every portrait either smiling or glaring as they passed. Edward himself was having so much fun that he didn't realize he ran right past Remus's room. Oh, Remus, Emmy said in surprise. We thought you were in your room. Edward left with the boys to... Remus? Alice and Rosalie were looking at him in concern. Emmett reached out to pat his shoulder while Jasper concentrated on the feelings that flowed through the werewolf. Both Carlisle and Esme were now calling Remus, but he couldn't pay them any attention. Percy Weasley was silently sitting next to his father while breaking a slice of bread into bits. The boy took one piece between his fingers and fed it to a rat that could only be Scabbers. Remus began shaking in his spot. The scent was too familiar, and the patchy, gray hair belonged to no other. Alice turned and looked at Percy's pet with wide eyes. "That's not a rat," she said slowly. Remus stepped closer and stared at the pink paws, but he still couldn't see. "Percy," he grunted. The boy turned up and looked at him. "Is your pet missing a finger?" he finished before Remus could continue. "We don't know what happened. We got him that way." "Is there something wrong, Remus?" Molly asked in concern. He ignored her, pulling his wand out and pointing it at Scabbers. "Remus, wait! What are you doing?" But it was too late. Scabbers ran out of Percy's grip and onto the floor, just when Remus waved his wand and a stream of light hit the running animagus. There on the ground was Peter Pettigrew, curled in a ball as he shielded his face from Remus's view. A tattered jacket hung off his shoulders, and his pants were torn at the bottom. When he turned slightly to get a view of his old friend, he was shocked to find that the man wore a grin on his face. His legs couldn't support him as Remus picked him up and hugged him tightly. Remus's eyes closed in disbelief. "You're alive." Cold, hard, dark. This had to be some kind of sick joke. He had gone out to find that traitorous bastard who killed his best friends and got thrown into Azkaban for it. Sirius Black rested his head on the stone wall of his cell with a dark chuckle. He couldn't believe what had happened to his life. The high and mighty Auror was brought to his knees in front of the wizarding world, and to make matters worse, Pettigrew was running free while Sirius was incarcerated for absolutely no reason. When he was first thrown into Azkaban, he had gotten a quick look at the time. Although he was sometimes foolish, he wasn't stupid. It would be hell, and nothing would be keeping him sane. But he counted. Every second, every minute, every hour. He knew exactly how long he had been a forced tenant in Azkaban, but it only lasted for so long. Falling in and out of sudden spasms due to the Dementors caused him to lose count, along with the burning feeling of hatred for Peter that consumed his every thought. He found himself thinking, always thinking. It was the only thing he could do in this godforsaken hellhole. He thought about Moony, the one surviving best friend he still had, and nearly threw up at the thought of Remus thinking he was a murderer. He thought about Harry and hoped that his dear godson was living his life happily. He thought about the day he would finally get out and take revenge on Pettigrew. Sirius's throat closed and his eyes fogged with tears. Why had this happened to him? The overwhelming feeling of regret drowned him every day. If he didn't go after Peter, he could have told everyone. He could have been taking care of Harry, and he wouldn't have to suffer the uncertainty of whether or not Remus really did hate him now. "Merlin, it was cold." He shivered and pulled his ragged shirt closer. A cold chill ran up his spine as he slumped over while a Dementor passed by. Edward closed his eyes and stopped running. Ron and Harry started to complain, but he wasn't listening. Something wasn't right. There was something going on in the Great Hall. "Boys," he told them, while quickly making his way to their room. "You are going to stay in Harry's room, and I'll be right back for you, okay?" Edward Harry asked, "What's going on?" "Nothing. Don't worry," he said firmly. He spoke the password quietly, and the portrait swung open. With a few strides, they were at Harry's door. Edward turned the knob and pushed them in. "Stay," he commanded, before turning on his heel and running down to the Great Hall. Ron and Harry glanced at each other. "Hey, Harry," Ron whispered. "We gonna follow him?" Harry whispered. "Auror Potter and Auror Weasley on the groove." "On the move." "On the move!" Edward stepped into the Great Hall and looked at the new man standing near the group. The family was smiling, all but Alice and Jasper. The Weasleys looked excited. Edward cleared his throat, catching his sister's attention. Alice's eyes were glazed with worry. "Edward, you have to help. I've been trying to get to him, but Remus has been so excited. He won't listen to anyone but Pettigrew." Pettigrew. Peter Pettigrew, Remus' friend, who was killed by Sirius Black. Edward quickly whipped his attention back to the haggard man. I can't believe it. I can't believe it was all the man could think. He couldn't find anything wrong with the situation. Obviously, Peter was happy to see his old... What if Remus finds out? I'll be thrown into Azkaban, without a doubt. And Sirius, dear God, he'll kill me. They'll both kill me. Edward tensed. There was no possible way. Peter went on with his thoughts. All about that Halloween night. All about the Dark Lord. And all about the arm the dark mark used to mar his forearm. Remus. Edward started slowly. Step away from him. Remus looked up for the first time, staring at him in confusion. Edward, what's the matter? Remus, get away from him now, he growled. Peter's eyes widened as he stepped back in fear. Emmett! Emmett quickly looked up before grabbing Peter by the arms. Edward quickly appeared before him. Hello, Peter. The man squeaked in response. Are you going to start telling the truth? Remus was staring at them in horror. Edward, what are you doing? Edward picked Peter up by his collar and threw him to the ground. Start talking, rat, before I make you start talking. I don't know what you're talking about, he wheezed as Edward pressed the heel of his foot down on Peter's stomach. Edward, Remus cried. Carlisle grabbed him. Remus, wait, there's a reason why Edward is doing this. He wouldn't do it otherwise. Talk, he shouted. You don't understand. Peter's face shifted in pain. You don't know what he would have done to me? I know what I'm going to do to you, you venomous traitor. Edward picked him up and threw him into the wall. Peter fell into an unconscious state before pinching the bridge of his nose. I thought I told you two to stay in the room. Harry ran in and jumped into Edward's arms while Ron ran to his mother. Tie him up and wait till he wakes up. Don't trust anything he says unless Alice says he's telling the truth. He waited for Ron to grab his hand before he took the two boys out of the Great Hall once more. What is going on? Remus asked breathlessly. Alice glared at the animagus with a deathly stare. An innocent man is locked up in Azkaban. Tie that murderer up. Peter blearily opened his eyes and looked around him. 6 vampires were glaring at him. At 2 red-headed adults would look at anything but him. Albus Dumbledore was sitting in a chair with a disappointed look on his face, and Remus was on the other side of the room, his head in his hands. Peter, Remus sobbed. How could you? Albus watched Rosalie quickly move to comfort the werewolf before he turned back with a sad sigh. Now Edward has already informed of what really happened, but I would like to hear it from you. Peter, although scared lifeless, stared in disbelief. Did the old fool actually think he was going to say anything out of his own free will? No, we don't, Edward told him stiffly. Peter froze. How did that boy... I'm old enough to be your grandfather, Junior. Now start speaking. Yo, you don't understand, Peter stuttered. The power the Dark Lord has, what he could have done to me. What would you have done? I would have died for them, Remus cried. I would have died for my friends. You filthy bastard. He lunged forward, but was quickly stopped by Emmett. I'll kill you. I'll kill you, Peter. For 3 years I believed you were dead. That Sirius was the one who left Harry an orphan. You damn liar. Have mercy. Peter shrieked when Remus slipped from Emmett's group. Jasper grabbed the werewolf and brought him back to the other side of the room. Jasper, calm him, Carlisle commanded. Jasper nodded, but Remus's rage was only fractionally diminished. Remus, please. He broke my pack apart and you expect me to calm down. Remus laughed darkly. The wolf inside him is getting stronger. I can't hold him alone, Jasper stated. Rosalie walked and stood on Remus's other side, grabbing his arm to keep him still. Edward glanced over at them. Emmett, stand in front of him. Seeing Pettigrew was just getting him angrier. Albus rubbed his knees before pulling a vial out of his pocket. He walked over to Peter, nodding towards Carlisle. The man came and held Peter tightly as Albus poured the potion down his throat. Peter choked, trying not to swallow, but it was no use. What is your name? Albus tested. Peter Pettigrew. What year were you born? 1960. Peter's eyes closed in horror. Veritaserum. There really was no way out of this anymore. Peter, please tell me, Albus said as if Peter had a choice. Were you the Potter's secret keeper? Yes. A sickened sob left Remus before Albus continued with his questions. Peter, were you in allegiance with the Dark Lord? Did you take the mark? Another affirmative response to his question. Did Sirius Black kill the 12 muggles that night? No. Did you kill them, Peter? Yes. Oh, Merlin, Sirius, Remus moaned, his knees collapsing. I turned my back on my best friend. I believed him to be a murderer. It's not your fault, Rosalie whispered to him as she hugged him tightly. It's not your fault. Albus opened the door and an Auror came walking in quietly. Peter Pettigrew, you are under arrest, and you shall be put on trial before the Wizengamot, he said quietly, as the Auror took Peter by the arm. No, have mercy, Remus, my friend. You must understand. He would have killed me. Then you should have died, Remus shouted. You should have died for your friends, like we would have done for you. The Auror jerked him away with a disgusted look before apparating away. With a snap of his fingers, the opening that was once open restored, and the wards of Hogwarts were strong again. Remus, get rest, Albus said. The man was about to protest, but with a wave of his hand, Remus slumped over and onto Emmett's arms. Take him to his room, Emmett, Albus asked gently. Emmett nodded and walked out of the room, carrying the unconscious werewolf. Carlisle, ace me. You'll come with me. Where? Esme wondered. To Azkaban. This is horrifyingly disgusting, Esme said as her nose wrinkled in horror. It smells like excrements and rotting flesh. Hold your breath, sweetheart. You don't need it, Carlisle reminded her. But I'm trying to find Sirius. You've never scented him before. Untrue. The first time you brought Harry home, there were 6 distinct scents on him, although there were 2 others I haven't identified yet. 2 were his parents. The 3 smelled so alike. The 3rd and 4th were Albus and Hagrid, which I realized when we first met them. The 5th was yours, of course. The 6th must be Sirius's. I'm getting a hint of it just standing here. Carlisle tilted his head to stare at his wife. Have I ever told you how amazing you were? Albus smiled at the lovely couple. This would be much more romantic if we weren't in such a dark and dreary place. Esme's and Carlisle's laughter brought a bit of light into Azkaban. Come now, an innocent man is waiting for his freedom. The 3 walked down the nearly pitch-black corridor, weary of what was around them. I don't like this place, Esme shivered, taking Carlisle's hand in her own. Albus quickly conjured a lamp and held it up. Silly me, he laughed. I gave them the wrong wand. Sirius Black was daydreaming again. Or maybe he was just dreaming. After all, he didn't know what time of day it was anymore. He smiled at the image in his mind. He could see his little Harry running into his arms, calling him Uncle Padfoot. He could hear the annoyance in Remus's voice as he brought out yet another toy out of his pocket. You'll spoil him. He could just hear the scolding tone that Remus would use. He felt Harry's tiny hands brush against his fingers as he reached up for the toy. Harry would whine as he tried to reach for the toy that was being pulled away from him, and after a demanding please, he would give in to his godson. Sirius! Ah, and there was his lovely girlfriend who nearly worshipped how beautiful Harry was. Sirius. Sirius. Sirius? Sirius Black? Is that you? Sirius's eyes opened and he glanced around wildly. What was going on? Oh dear. Sirius. I think those damn ghost creatures have made him fall unconscious. I vote we kill them. She was stopped when Sirius let out a chuckle. So do I, pet, he grunted. He squinted and pulled back once he realized just how close the woman was. It's been a while since I've spoken to someone or seen such a pretty bird. Hey, a joking voice cut in. Sirius watched a man crouch down beside the woman. She's mine. Carlisle, Alice won't be very happy when she sees him. What's that supposed to mean? Sirius asked in defense. Wait, sees me? Our daughter is a bit of a fashion queen. So, Azkaban is giving their prisoners makeovers? His eyebrows shot up. Bloody hell, right? I'd get one. I've been here for much longer than you should have. A new voice cut in. Sirius jolted up in his spot as he shook slightly. He knew that voice. He was sure it was him. Hello, young Sirius. Albus, he breathed. What the bloody hell is going on? He flinched when he heard the stutter out of his voice. He wasn't one to be weak. Albus took Sirius's hand and pulled him up. He passed the lamp to the man named Carlisle before turning back to the man. Before him, Sirius Black, let me be the first to tell you that I am so sorry. Sirius shook his head. This couldn't be happening. He was hallucinating. That was what it was. He was hallucinating again. Sirius, look at me. Please, son. He looked back up. I wish I knew so I could have stopped this. I wish we found Peter sooner, and I wish I had put more faith in you. I'm so sorry. For the first time since he saw the wreckage of Godric's Hollows, Sirius felt tears come to his eyes. How long has it been, Albus? The year. A laugh left Sirius. Harry is 4 now, and he's growing to be a beautiful boy, Esme told him. Sirius sent her a questioning look. We, she paused in hesitance. We adopted him. A sharp pain stabbed at his heart before he nodded in acceptance. One of the first words he said to us was Padfoot. Of course it sounded like Patfoof, but I'm sure you knew that. And, Esme, calm down, Carlisle whispered. I'm trying to impress our child's godfather, she snapped. How did you know that I was Padfoot? Sirius asked, in curiosity. Oh, that was Remus. He told us about it. Remus? His eyes lit up. How is he? Has he been taking care of himself? He hasn't been stressing himself out too much, has he? Carlisle smiled at him. Remus is currently under a magically induced sleep. He glanced at Albus before continuing. He nearly killed Mr. Pettigrew and his body was being under way too much stress. I didn't know he had it in him, Sirius said in disbelief. He looked at the faces before him, suddenly grinning wolfishly. Does this mean I get to make a mockery out of the wizarding world? Albus couldn't stop the laugh that left him. It certainly does. Forgive me for this, but I love seeing the constipated look on the officials' faces when people point out their faults. Albus. Esme laughed. She turned back, ignoring Sirius's stinging smell, and hugged him tightly. Oh, this is so exciting. A new member of the family. You're much stronger than you look, he wheezed. A poignant feeling overcame Sirius as he stared at his old school in happiness. Hey, Albus. The headmaster nodded. Do you remember when I burned one of the tables in the Great Hall during the graduation ceremony? Sadly, yes. Did you keep it like I told you to? It's the table I have at my summer house. It's falling apart, however. I'll have to buy a new one. Sirius laughed as he ran around the grounds. Look at this. Albus, I'm free. I'm finally free. Free, free, free. Esme smiled as she watched him fool around like a teenager. I'm free. I'm free. And then so... His face twisted into disgust. Oh, gods, how did you stand it? Before Carlisle could answer him, they heard a shriek sound from within the castle. Harry, Carlisle said as ran in. Harry, son. Before his feet touched the stone walkway of the castle, the raven-haired boy flew into his arms. Harry, what is it? Daddy, the Bloody Baron chased me and Ron. The boy hiccuped as Ron came out, face pale and hands shaking. Ronald, Esme gasped as she quickly picked him up. Miss Esme, Ron sobbed. I don't want to go back in. Dear Ronald, don't cry. Alice suddenly appeared, glaring at the boys. Didn't I tell you not to leave my side? That's why the Bloody Baron chased you. Suddenly she smiled and looked at Esme. The others are still with Remus. They've been with him since the meeting. The boys were acting quite well behaved while you guys were talking to Mr. Traitorous. Jerk. But the minute they found out that Molly was letting Ron sleep over and that the two of you were out of the castle, they began running around like a bunch of barbarians. Even I can't keep up with them. They're sneaky little creatures. I guess Remus was right in saying that Harry's gonna grow up to be just like James. Although Sirius was delighted to hear that Harry was like his father, her eyes narrowed. We're really gonna have to keep them away from Emmett. I refuse to babysit again. If I do, there'll be more trouble. Alice, leave them be, Esme scolded. Harry, son, no more tears. They Bloody Baron can't get you when I'm here, Carlisle whispered. Sirius didn't know why he felt so angry. He always hoped that a kind family had found Harry, and these people looked perfect. He knew it would have been impossible for Remus to take Harry in, but he always prayed that he had. Looking at Harry in Carlisle's arms deeply pained him. If Peter hadn't betrayed them, Harry would still be with James. Lily would be singing him to sleep and waking him in the morning. He was jolted out of his thoughts when he heard Harry speak again. He said he eats children. He continued to sob. I don't like Hogwarts anymore. Ron nodded in agreement, hiding his red face on Esme's shoulder. It's all right, my sweet ones. Esme sighed, no pun intended. I don't get it. Sirius deadpanned. Now really isn't the time to talk about this, Albus cut in. Talk about what? Well, just say it, Albus. Sirius, this may be hard to accept, but the Cullens are vampires that don't... You let them adopt Harry? What kind of stupid, rash decision is that? For all you could know, they could turn him into a meal once he's older, has more meat on him, or they could slip and kill him accidentally. Harry glared at Sirius, wondering why he was so angry about his family. They won't eat me, Daddy promised. Sirius's icy stare nearly froze Carlisle. Well, he isn't your really daddy, is he? So why would you trust him? As soon as the words left his mouth, he instantly regretted them. Harry's eyes widened. Yes, he is. Sirius shook his head sadly. He isn't. You're lying. I'm not. You're a big fat liar. No, Harry. And a meanie. Wait, I'm sorry. Go away.
Sirius's heart shattered.
Not only did he just insult a welcoming family, but he made himself out to be a big ponce. How's he supposed to fix this?